Okay, well, welcome to week 3. This week we're going to finish our romantic poets with Shelley and Keats. So, a couple extra things. We've been talking about elements of romantic poetry and how nature is really important to them, feeling and emotion is really important to them. The fact that the intellect is usually taking a back seat to that. This week, those things continue. What we have here is now a second generation. While Blake might have been the godfather of this movement, Wordsworth and Coleridge officially kicked it off. And here we have a new generation now of younger poets who idolized those two characters. So they're going to continue with much of the same feelings and sentiments about nature and the importance of emotion and intuition and really just feeling. In addition to that, though, I would like to point out that another aspect that romantics often really enjoyed was this sense of the fragmentary, the not quite complete. Something about the potential of a fragment, the potential of something not quite finished yet, really spoke to the romantics. I guess it makes sense if you think about it, because something that is complete and whole, that's logical, right? Something that's not quite finished yet or is fragmentary doesn't have that same inherent logic to it, and so therefore is I don't know, more romantic. In fact, when we have famous musicians die young, it happens all the time. 27-year-old people die. Whether it's Aaliyah or Kurt Cobain, or you go back further, Jim Morrison. There's something romantic about them. What could they have done if they had only lived longer? So, speaking of which, we have two poets who both died very young this week. Shelley died at like 30, Keats at like 26, but they managed to produce a great amount of work while they were around. The other thing, though, in addition to fragments, because I guess I brought that up because their lives were sort of fragmentary, and we'll see, Kubla Khan is meant to be almost like a fragment. Just the Ozymandias this week plays off this idea of the fragmentary, the incomplete, the who knows what. In addition to that, though, there is a dark streak in what we call romanticism. Many people have pointed out in the years following that it was there's an aspect of romantic ethos, the romantic ethos, that is somewhat egotistical, right? So here's an example. Shelley believed in, first of all, he didn't believe in God. He was expelled from school for his atheism. He and a friend, Thomas Jefferson Hogg, wrote this atheistic pamphlet, and he did not denounce it. He did not, in other words, he didn't say he did write it, but he didn't say he didn't. And that was enough to get him expelled from college, and he then, at 18, he ran away and married a 16-year-old girl. And so I guess what I'm saying is that this whole like hippie stuff that we talked about before does have a dark side. This idea of free will and do what you want and free love and everything, especially in a patriarchal system like we have now, but even more so in this early 19th century time, kind of screws the women over. And that's what Shelley does all the time. He marries this woman, girl, really, right? He winds up abandoning her because he feels it is immoral to live with someone you don't love anymore. So he leaves her, and he runs away with William Godwin's daughter. William Godwin is, of course, the guy who influenced Wordsworth into thinking about maybe flirting with atheism in his youth. William Godwin's daughter, you might know, her mother was also super famous. William Godwin was married to Mary Wollstonecraft, who wrote on the Vindication of the Rights of Women, one of the very first seminal works of feminism in the West. Mary Wollstonecraft and William Godwin's daughter, of course, was also called Mary. Mary Wollstonecraft and William Godwin's daughter, Mary, that you might know as Mary Shelley, because they do eventually get married. Of course, they don't get married until Harriet, his first wife, kills herself, having been jilted, left, abandoned by Shelley. He ran away with Mary Wollstonecraft's daughter, Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley, right? She wrote Frankenstein, which is like an alright book. It's really not that great. And when you want to talk about who the great Shelleys are in British literature, Percy Bysshe Shelley, the guy we're reading this week, he's the one. Mary Shelley wrote one book. It's not even that great. Sorry. Anyway, so he dies young, boating accident. Keats is a good friend of his, is one of the only, I think he might be the first one of the few people maybe this semester so far, low-class guy. His father ran stables. He was trained to be a doctor, which back then was not what it is today. You know, like being a doctor, you think of that as like prestigious job, but no, not really, not back then. There wasn't a lot to medicine. We didn't really understand a lot, so being trained as a doctor didn't really mean a whole lot. He gets sick with tuberculosis though, and he knows it. So again, he dies at 26. So most of his poetry was written under the shadow of looming, imminent, and inescapable death that he knew was coming very, very soon. So there was also a guess, right? Something fragmentary about his life. And so we'll see that. We'll see that in some of the writing. So there we go. I think that's pretty much it. There's a lot of irony. Oh, the other thing is these two poets, you'll see that they do use form a lot. They'll play with form a lot too. So we'll have some sonnets that won't look like they're supposed to look. We'll have, I don't know, maybe some meter that changes in ways that it's not supposed to. And that's stuff that I'll definitely be pointing out in my final thoughts for the end of this week when we get there. So, as always, read the poems, read them again, read them again, read them again. Get on the discussion boards. Just do your best. The point is to answer the questions to the best of your ability. Make sure that you have some supporting evidence from the texts. In other words, quote the poems, refer to things or images mentioned in the poems to support your opinions and views. And of course, if you have any questions or hit any snags, you have my email address. It's on the syllabus. Contact me and I'll get back to you. Otherwise, enjoy this week's poems. One more week of poetry after this, and then we're going to get into prose. So enjoy. We do have nine discussion boards, which means you should be posting 27 times this week. But the reading is a little bit lighter, you'll see. There's no prose at all except for like a short letter. So again, email me if you have any questions, and enjoy.